Obviously, there's been a lot of talk about this over the years. David Baddiel's been very vocal on it as a Chelsea fan.
Classic Baddiel.
Spurs have put out loads of polls and fan kind of trying to get the fans' opinions on the use of the word and stuff like that. But let's go through what the statement has read. I mean, it is
I'm trying
quite.
to find it. Where is it?
It's on the website. It is quite a.
Didn't tweet it. Oh.
No, they didn't tweet it because they knew the backlash that would get on Twitter.
So they just put it on their website.
So they just put it on the website. But it's quite a strongly worded statement. We haven't had a statement like this from Tottenham from the Y word before. I mean, they have tried to stop it, but never kind of. But
look what it did.
Exactly. The thing I love most is being a yid. So yeah, let's go through the statement and see.
Okay, so I'll read it. It says. As we emerge from the COVID-19 pandemic and can now say with a degree of confidence that the fans are back in stadiums for good, we feel it's time to update you, the club, on the club's review of the Y word. Among some of our fan base, supporter focus groups were concluded in the summer 2020. However, we made the decision to delay the release of our findings while continued uncertainty around fan attendance and matches remain. We are living in times of heightened awareness of cultural appropriation and sensitivities. It is therefore crucial to the values of our club and our fans that we are even more mindful of controversial nature of this term. We have always recognised that this is a complex issue and the appropriateness of its use should regularly be assessed. Towards the end of 2019, we commenced the first stage of consultation with fans and received more than 23,000 responses, with 94% acknowledging the Y word can be considered a racist term against a Jewish person. The results can be viewed here. Our supporters used the Y word was initially taken as a positive step to deflect anti-Semitic abuse that they were subjected to at matches more than 40 years ago from opposition fans who faced no sanctions for their actions. The term continues to be used up to this present day by some of our supporters. We have a lot of our supporters,
majority, let's say.
We have always maintained that our fans have never used it with any deliberate attempt to offend. Indeed, among the reasons some fans choose to continue to chant the term now is to show unity and support for the team as well as each other as a defense mechanism against anti-Semitic abuse that still exists, and also as a way to identify as a Spurs fan. Outside of a football setting, however, an overwhelming majority of our fans acknowledged in the first stage of our latest consultation the Y word can be considered a racist term against a Jewish person, and they would therefore not use it in such context. After a pause due to the pandemic, we undertook the second phase of the consultation in the form of virtual support focus groups. These were facilitated by an independent, experienced moderator, and the groups comprised a cross-section of fans in respect of both religion and age. A full range of supporter views from our focus group can be read here. I never actually read that, but it says key findings have shown members of our fan base feel uncomfortable with the Y word's continued use at matches. Supporters who are prepared to defend their position on why they use the term expressed an openness to its use being reduced if it caused offence to fellow fans. Supporters, especially those of the younger generation, are often unaware of the term's meaning and its historical context when chanting it. That now more than ever it is time to reassess and reconsider its ongoing use. Moving forward, we pride ourselves on being inclusive and progressive club and are aware of the growing cultural sensitivity globally. We've already seen several sports entities and franchises make appropriate changes to nicknames and as aspects of their identities and recognition of evolving sentiments. As a club, we strive to create welcoming environments that embrace all our fans so every one of our supporters can feel included in a matchday experience. It's clear the use of this term does not always make this possible, regardless of context and intention, and there is a growing desire and acknowledgement from supporters that the Y word should be used less or stop used altogether. It says in bold now, we recognise how these members of our fan base feel, and we also believe it is time to move on from associating with this term with our club. The adoption of the Y word from our supporters in the late 70s was a positive response to the lack of action taken by others around the issue. An increasing number of our fans now wish to see a positive change again with the reduction of its use, something we welcome and shall look to support. We acknowledge that any reassessment of the use of this term needs to be a collaborative effort between club and fans. We shall be working to further outline the historical context of the term, to explain the offence it can cause, and to embrace the times in which we now live to show why it can be considered inappropriate regardless of context. Then it says that they're launching something called the Y Word online hub, which is dedicated to exploring the historical context. It says the club also refrained from engaging with any social media handle or bio that contains the Y Word, and we do not permit it being printed on shirts in any official retail outlets or used in any official context. We are grateful for the efforts of our supporters have given to this matter. And then it goes on to say about anti-Semitism in football, and that they're committed to stomping out anti-Semitism in football and all that kind of stuff.
And so are we, and that's why this word came about, to be honest. That's why the word came about, to stamp anti-Semitism out of football. Like the statement says, that's how the word came about in the early 70s when fans such as, West Ham, Millwall, Chelsea fans, even Arsenal fans to an extent, came to our stadium with the whole anti-Semitic tropes and gas chamber noises and stuff like that. The word got brought up into stands, so non-Jewish football fans and anyone of any race, anything can stand by the Jewish fans and being like, you're part of us. We are Jews as well.
In solidarity with Jewish supporters.
Solidarity thing, exactly. So for them to try and stamp it out like this, I mean, it doesn't sit right with me, because it's the whole reason why we use it is a solidarity, is to stand in solidarity. And me, as a Jewish Spurs fan, I'm very proud of the term, and I'm very proud of the use of the term. And there's no chance. I'm not going to stop singing it. I just can't. It's a big thing of my Spurs supporting, from the stands.
Yeah, and I think it's so ingrained in Tottenham's identity now that it's impossible at this point, unless you're going to start fining Tottenham after every game, or unless you're going to literally start punishing Tottenham fans by playing behind closed doors, or literally arresting or fining specific Tottenham fans for using the word. It's impossible to stamp it out, because it's for years now been ingrained in the Tottenham identity that we're the Ids. That's part of our identity. It's, how many chants does that word come into it? Like so many of our chants has that word. Unless you're gonna tell Tottenham they have to come up with a whole new set of chants, it's impossible to get rid of it. And to now say as well that because Tottenham fans were standing in solidarity, is now because everyone is so sensitive around cultural appropriation and very sensitive around these topics, that now the context is irrelevant, is doesn't make any logical sense. How can you take away context from a situation? Context always matters from every situation. I hate modern society for the purpose of taking away context from these situations. Like, context is very, very important. You can't just take context away. And I hate to bring this up, but I went to a football game once with the chief rabbi back in 2005. We went to a football game.
Who was the chief rabbi? Yeah,
he was a chief. It wasn't chief rabbi at the time, but he's chief rabbi now. And we took a banner to the game. Yeah, which it was a big banner because it was a trip with our local synagogue, and we went to a Spurs game, and we held a banner saying, "We've got the biggest yid in the ground," and it was a big deal. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. It was jokes. The rabbi, the rabbi at the time didn't take any offense to it. It was a big laugh. We had this banner in the ground, and if the chief rabbi can see the funny side of that, and can see how in that context it's not offensive, then why all of a sudden are we trying to take offense to this and trying to ban it and trying to say, even though you used it in solidarity, we're now gonna say you're causing offense? That doesn't make sense to me. The problem is you have look, we're both Jewish. There's no secret to that. We're obviously grew up in a Jewish household. We know the historical context of the word. I mean, I personally have never been called that in a racist term. I don't know if you have.
I mean, the only time I've been called it is at some of these grounds. That's it.
Right, from opposition fans.
Most notably Arsenal and Chelsea.
Yeah. Okay. So fair enough. I think I've probably heard it maybe a few times from that point of view. But that's why it's been used in response to that. And as Tottenham rightly say in their statement, it was used because there was no one else doing anything about it. Tottenham were going away all down to all these grounds and all these anti-Semitic abuse thrown at them, and there was nothing being done about it by any authorities or anything. So Tottenham fans took it amongst themselves to do something about it, and now. I mean, I can't speak for all Jews, but I've got a lot of Jewish supporting Tottenham friends, and I know they very much like the use of it.
I've got so many Jewish supporting Tottenham friends, right, that we go week in, week out with all around the years. I mean, I've been, my first Spurs game I went to, I was 7 years old, right? So I've got a lot of friends from school, from everywhere, a lot of Jewish Spurs fans that go week in, week out. I have never heard of one of them ever saying they feel uncomfortable, they don't like the term. Every single one, barring none, have all said they use it as a badge of honor. They love the term. It makes them feel more at home.
Makes them feel included more.
It makes them feel included, and it's literally, they use it as a complete badge of honor. And they're proud because of how the word got brought up. They're proud of how the rest of the Spurs fans stood in solidarity with them at that moment.
It is when you think about how it all started, it is something to be proud of, and it's something to think when you read about that. That's a very good story. That should be celebrated, about how fan bases can rally around people who are being abused by opposition fans and stand in solidarity with them and make them feel part of that fan base and not cast them aside.
It just feels like they're focusing on us who use the term in a positive way and not focusing on the real problem here. Not focusing on the real racism, on the real anti-Semitism that comes from the opposition fans. If anyone needs to create a hub to learn about anti-Semitism and stuff like that, it's the fans that brought up this chant originally.
Yeah, and that's what Chelsea are doing, to be fair. Apparently, they've done a lot of work. But the problem is, I mean, it's they're under pressure. They're not under pressure. They're probably under pressure from Premier League and sponsors and whatever. They're more under pressure from Jews themselves, from outside of the context of football. So CST made a statement saying it is so incongruous to see Spurs players taking a knee before the match in opposition to racism, and then when the match starts you have the Y word, which is in any other context anti-Semitic abuse ringing around the stadium. So they obviously support the banning of the word. But they're obviously they're an anti-Semitism charity, but they don't represent me as a Jew. So, but what do we say in response to that? Are they right? Like, if other Jews do find it offensive, what can you say to them to say that why the word should be allowed?
I think the people that do find offense to it, you have to teach them the history of why it's being sung. You have to teach them the history. I remember, probably, I don't know if I should bring this up, but I remember speaking to my grandma at the time. She was always against that word being sung at the stadium. We did that video with the Ajax channel, right? And we delved deep into it and why it's being sung and why we think it's a great thing. She saw that video and she was like, oh, now I understand it. And it's actually quite a good thing that the Spurs fans stood in solidarity. So I think these people need to be educated on why the word is brought up. It's not just because Spurs have, a lot of Jewish fans and these Jewish fans sing it and the ones that aren't Jewish don't sing it. You know what I mean? It's not like that. It's not a division. It's literally to keep everyone together. And so it's a very positive thing why Spurs sing that word, why Spurs sing Yid Army. And people don't actually realise that. People don't realise the whole meaning of the word and why Spurs do sing it.
Yeah, and I think maybe they just... I think a lot of the Jews feel like we just sing it maybe not understanding the full context behind why Spurs fans sing it, and they just think, well, maybe it's because Tottenham fans are a Jewish club, so they think they can just adopt this word from Jews, and that's why they sing it in that way. And from that context, maybe I can understand why they're more offended, but if they really understood the context of why Spurs fans sing, I don't understand how they can find it why they would find that offensive.
And I hate this this narrative being like, oh, if Spurs didn't sing it, then you wouldn't get any anti-Semitic abuse.
It's rubbish.
Biggest load of rubbish I've ever heard. Like, we started singing it because of the anti-Semitic abuse. We don't get anti-Semitic abuse because we're singing it.
It's the other way around.
It's completely ridiculous.
But here's an interesting take from I'm not calling him out, but it's an interesting take from Matt Hayes on Twitter. And if you do want the word banned, I understand your point of view, but he says it's okay to understand Tottenham fans' use of the Y word proudly and as a celebration of the club's roots, while also acknowledging how it is offensive. If a fraction of our fan base, or indeed the Jewish community, are offended, then we need to stop. I guess it depends. Yeah, I mean, look, it's hard. I mean, and from that point of view, I understand that, because if you talk about other forms, you know, if I can only talk for myself and as a Jew, and I'm not offended by it, and I'm happy and I'm proud of that kind of identity and how it was used and the history behind it. But if someone is offended by it, then do we have a duty to stop? I don't know. That is a difficult question. It's a difficult question to answer.
Look, I think, it is a difficult question to answer, but ultimately, me and you, we're both, you know, since a young age, very much ingrained within the Jewish society and Jewish way of life. We've pretty much predominantly only mixed with like Jewish people our whole lives, going to Jewish schools and stuff like that. We know a lot of Jewish Spurs fans, a lot. And I've never I'm not saying there isn't one, and I'm not saying there isn't quite a few, but I've literally never come across a Jewish Spurs fan that's taken offense to that word inside the stadium, ever.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are.
I'm not saying they're not, but, you know, we've come across in our lifetime
I haven't met one. I haven't met
Jewish
one.
Spurs fans, a lot, right? Throughout our whole life. I've never come across one that have taken offense to it.
And also, what I would say is, look, I understand, and it's difficult. It's difficult for me to tell you not to be offended. I can't do that. I can't. If you're offended, that's just your reaction to it, and that's fair enough. You have a right for that reaction. But just because you are offended, maybe you have to think about why you're offended about the use of that term in this context. I think you have to think about, if you take the history of why the use of that term into account, why does that offend you? Why is that something you would want banned from a stadium just because those words are uttered? Surely context does matter in these situations.
Context always matters.
And I think that if you take context out of it, that can be very damaging for a lot of things. And I would say that of course you have people, all Jews have the right to be offended by that, but I would rather try and live in a society where, or for me anyway, this is just speaking for myself, I would rather try and readopt the word in a positive way than try and give that word power to continue to be offended by it.
Absolutely.
Why would I want to do that? Why would
Absolutely.
I want to give that word power by saying this should be banned, that when anyone who utters it should be banned? Like, you're giving that word power, then you're giving it more oxygen for it to be used in a negative way. Whereas when Tottenham readopt it, why is it in a positive way to unify the Tottenham fan base and stand up for the Jewish fans who are being abused? Why would you not want to reappropriate it in a positive context? Why would you rather keep the negative context? Exactly. That's what I don't understand. And I understand that word was used in a horrible racist way for years, like many years ago. But let's be honest, like, is it? Look, I don't know. I haven't been. That's not been used against me that many times. I haven't heard of that many people. It's been used against them, like in the street or anything, like as an anti-Semitic. Well, maybe it has, but I don't know too many instances of it personally. But why would you not rather want to reappropriate the positive context rather than keep the negative context? That's what I don't understand.
In my opinion, that word in a negative light, I mean, that word is right now in this day and age is associated with Spurs. Right?
More often than anti-Semitic abuse.
More than anti-Semitic abuse. I mean, it's a very
so much of the dictionary said, didn't it? The dictionary said, when was it? A couple of years ago.
Years back, yeah.
They added it to their definition of. They said Latin for Jew and also means a Tottenham fan.
Isn't that such a beautiful thing though, that we've actually stood, the Spurs fans actually stood so much in solidarity with the Jews that the actual meaning of this word in the dictionary had changed to a positive what in a
not
positive
changed, it added to it.
Added to it.
Yeah, they added to the definition.
Isn't that a beautiful thing?
Yeah, and I think that instead of Tottenham fan, look, it's hard because I don't represent all Jews, so I can't say all you Jews shouldn't be offended. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying if a Jew can tell me why this is something negative, and why if you include the history of everything, if you include why the word is used, why this definitely should be stopped, and why they are offended by the use of that word in that context, and why it's better to keep the negative context of the word rather than try and reappropriate it in a positive way moving forward, which I think is better for the future. Why would you? And that's why I don't understand. If that can be convinced of that, then I am willing to say we should stop that word. But for me, how I see it, if we can reappropriate that way in a positive way and keep and
which we have done,
and we can keep the positive context of it rather than giving it more power negative way for us to be offended by it and us to people like allow. It's basically giving power to anti-Semites in a way by allowing that word to be used, by allowing us to be offended by that word,
and undoing all the hard work that Spurs fans have done since the 70s of standing by the Jews and bringing that word into a positive light.
So that's what I would say to CST in response to that. Like when they come up with all these things, I understand people are offended by it, and you're completely, that's within your right. But for me, as a Jew living in the UK, grown up in Jewish circles, this is how I feel about it. And CST don't represent my views, and just because they claim to represent all Jews, they don't represent me as a Jew.
And they don't represent literally 100% of Spurs Jewish fans
I wouldn't
that
you've met, fair enough. Yeah, I wouldn't say all 100% of Jewish Spurs
that I've met.
Yeah, that you've met. Yeah, for me as well. I've yet to meet a Jewish Spurs fan who is really offended by that term. I've yet to meet one. And look, I've not met every Jewish Spurs fan there is, so I'm open to it.
Of course.
But any Jewish person I met hasn't been offended by it. So
yeah, look, you got to be open to all different opinions and stuff like that, and people are offended by different things, of course. But as two Jewish Spurs fans who have grown up in heavily Jewish circles, this is the way we feel about it.
This is it. And I've some super chats here from George, who is I don't know, is George Jewish?
No, I don't think so.
But he's a super chat. Said, felt very emotional watching Ben speak just now. I would always stand by my fellow Jewish Spurs fans and have always used the term of solidarity with them against racism against them. Big up to you, George.
Big up, George.
So it says, as a Jewish person with Mitzrayim heritage, I have no issue with the Y word, but the likes of David Bazil, CST and Board of Deputies have been against Spurs for letting this word be used. Mm-hmm. They have, and I also think it's difficult because there's always different, how do you say, not narratives, but different agendas at play with all these things.
And David Baddiel, who's a big Chelsea fan, I mean, I would love to know what David Baddiel's views would be if he was a Spurs fan.
Yeah, I think they always co-counsel. I don't think David Baddiel is like trying to get at Spurs because by doing this, but it never looks right that he is a big Chelsea fan and he's saying all this stuff, like trying to get Tottenham fans to get rid of their identity. Coming from a Chelsea fan, it's never going to be.
And let's be honest, right? Even if they do try and crack down on this word, and you've got like, let's say on what, like 40,000 people in a stadium screaming it out, what are they going to do? How are they supposed to stop
and
that?
Also, like, as a Jew, they can't charge us for saying it.
You know what I mean?
We can say it. What are they going to do? Charge me for anti-Semitism for saying the word?
Exactly.
As a Jew, they can't.
Exactly.
They can't. I'm going to say it. So whatever. Yeah. Then another from
Rajesh Sharma.
Rajesh Sharma says, mate, I'm far away from Tottenham but I think we have changed the meaning of the word in a way. Proud to be a Yid. Love from
Qatar, I think that is.
Qatar. COYS.
I think it's Qatar, I'm not sure.
Don't know. Is that Qatar? I can't see. And another one from Kilo Tango says, sat behind Chelsea away end in December 2019. They were hissing all game. No one cared. Rudiger falsely accuses us of racism, pandemonium.
That's a Nepal flag. That flag was.
Nepal. No, well, look, when it goes to Rudiger, a lot of people say he falsely. Look, I don't know. Like, I know whatever happened.
Look,
I think I think he
wasn't-
was genuine when he accused him. I just don't think.
Yeah, but I think that, you know, some of the chants can be kind of maybe misheard in the heat of the moment as kind of...
Because I think when you haven't heard all the Tottenham chants and you hear someone go, who are the Leeds at? You can probably especially if you're foreign, you might be able to misinterpret that as something else.
I think exactly what it was.
Yeah, and I understand that. The Americanka says that my fellow Jewish would make George Jewish. So maybe George is Jewish. Wouldn't surprise me. Okay, so yeah, that's it for now, I think.
All right. Well, that's our take on the Y word, obviously.